Hi, welcome back to our Leadership and Teams class. We're now going to get into the section on leading teams and participative management. And before I get into it, before I start to talk about some of the thoughts that they have, some of the suggestions they have to help make you a better leader of teams, I want to talk just a moment or two about the importance of teams. We've talked about that before in class, and I can't stress it enough. Um, as I mentioned, I've taught quite a lot of strategic management classes, and one of the things that we learn in there, one of the key principles that we learn in there, is a business, a sports team, uh, does not find success just because of the individuals on it. You might have a team of the greatest all-stars ever, whether it's a sports team or a business team or whatever, and you might find that you're going to lose quite a lot. If you go back in time, you'll find that for most of the years that the New York Yankees have been together, particularly since the 60s and 70s and 80s, 90s, and onward, um, they have usually had some of the best players, if not the best players. They have a huge payroll, and they're able to recruit literally the best players around the league. And yet, if you take a look at it and ask yourself how many times have they won the World Series, the answer is very small. As a matter of fact, they haven't done very well in the last 10 years or so, maybe even longer. Well, why is that? We have all the best parts. Why aren't we winning more? We're winning, but we're not winning the top prize. Why? In fact, in many years, they also didn't do too well. Why? Because it's not the parts that you have. It's not the players that you have. It's the way that you use them, the way that you bring them all together. And so it's not the parts, it's the system. It's not the players, it's the team. How do you bring together those people, those parts, etc., all into a system, all into a team? That's what brings you success. Some of the most successful teams have been teams that didn't have the absolute best players on them, the best parts. They just had a coach or manager or business leader who was able to bring those parts together in a really good system. So what we're looking at here is this concept of building teams is how you're going to build a system. And the better your system, usually the greater the odds of your success. So this concept of leading teams is immense. Let's take a look at the topics we're going to look at today. Under leading teams and participative management, first major topic, we're going to look at criteria for using participation. When should I use participation? Then we're going to take a look at the benefits of participation. We're going to look at the role of culture. How does culture play in team building, etc., and leading teams? We're going to look at the benefits of delegation, delegating authority to people on the team, etc., guidelines for good delegation, excuses for not delegating. These are not saying these are things you should use. These are the things that people often say, I'm not delegating because. And oftentimes, they're not necessarily the best of excuses, not for excuses. We're also going to look at the characteristics of good teams, what makes a good team. And then we're going to look at dysfunctions in teams, what makes a bad team or hurts a team. And then we're going to conclude with the roles of team leaders, the roles of team leaders. So let's go ahead and let's get started here. Let's start off with the criteria for the use of participation. Basically, when should we use participation in our business or in our team or whatever that we have? With regard to that, your textbook has 6 thoughts, 6 suggestions. The first thing they say is you want to use participation when the task is complex and quality is important. When the task is complex and quality is important. If I get more people involved here, etc., maybe we'll find that all the various complex things that we need to accomplish can be accomplished because we have various people with those skill sets, etc. We might also find that bringing the people together that we have into this team, we can actually improve quality because now people can focus on the best things that they do. And if we bring a whole lot of good things together, maybe the whole quality goes up. Let's take a look at the second criteria for the use of participation, and that is when follower commitment is needed. If you're a leader, you want to have your followers committed. One way to help get them committed is get them participating. Usually there's a link, a direct link, a positive correlation between being involved, being participative, and the commitment that you have. It doesn't work all the time, but it works an awful lot of the time. Let's go to the third criteria for when you should use participation: when you have time. Let's face it, there are times that you don't have any time. We've got to get done immediately. And maybe at that point, forming a team, using participation, maybe you just don't have it. Hopefully you do, but maybe you don't. Another criteria for using team is when the leaders and the followers are ready. When the leaders and followers are ready. You might not be ready. You might not have your plans in place. The followers might not be ready. Going back to Lewin and whatever, maybe we haven't gotten them to the unfreezing stage or whatever. So when do you want to use participation? When everybody's ready. Then just two more of these. When you want to use participation, the next one is when the leader and the followers can easily interact. When the leader and followers can easily interact. If you're having participation with regard to your team, with regard to your business, it's probably good that you're going to be involved too, that you can interact with that. Because otherwise, they could participate, and all of a sudden they're going off in another direction, not the direction that you wanted or that your company needed or your team needed. So another time when you're going to do this is when the leaders and the followers can interact. And finally, the last criteria for the use of participation, at least according to your book, is when two or more heads are better than one, or two or more sets of hands are better than one. Let's face it, we've heard that phrase. Two or more heads are better than one. Maybe two sets of hands are better than one. I need help in doing something. Sometimes it's not true. Sometimes you have multiple people who are participating, and sometimes it'd be easier if just one did it, or better. But a lot of occasions, you're going to find that, hey, two heads are better than one. Two sets of hands are better than one. That's certainly a great time to use participation. So that finishes up the first major topic, the criteria for the use of participation. Let's go to the second major topic, benefits of participation. Benefits of participation. My guess is we could probably load up a book with regard to the benefits, but your book is listed 4. And these 4 are pretty good, but I'm sure that you can come up with a lot more. The first benefit, it helps with the development of followers. Helps with the development of followers. If you've ever been part of an organization, let's say that you start working someplace, and you're kind of you're new, you're outside, etc. They're not involving you. Well, if you don't get your hands involved in this, if you don't start to participate, you don't learn as fast. So you can develop much faster. Your followers can develop much faster if they participate. Let's go to the second benefit of participation. It can lead to better decisions on complex tasks. It can lead to better decisions on complex tasks. I know, for example, if I get together with people and we're trying to do some task, I know that I have some strengths. I also know that I have some weaknesses. There's some skills I have, some skills I don't. So one of the things I can do is, with regard to complex tasks, as I pull together this team, I can pull together people who have strengths where I have weaknesses, or who have skills and talents where I don't, and that certainly can help to accomplish those tasks. Let's go to the third benefit of participation. The third, it can lead to an increase of follower motivation and commitment. It can lead to an increase of follower motivation and commitment. The concept of engagement is immense with regard to motivation. If you can get people engaged, if you can get them to feel they're part of the system, the odds are that their motivation is going to go up, their loyalty and the commitment is going to go up. So this concept of follower engagement is immense, and that's where if you get them participating, it might help. And let's go to the fourth and the final benefit of participation. It can create an opportunity to empower your followers. It can create an opportunity to empower your followers. Well, frankly, it almost has to, right? If you have a bunch of followers, right, finally get this team together. You get all these people that want to help you out, whatever cause you have. Get all these followers together. If you don't empower them, what are they going to do? They're going to get bored. They're not going to have anything to do, and they're eventually going to start to leave. But you don't want that. So now you can create an opportunity for you to empower them, to give them something to do with regard to their time, and that will help to tie them to the cause that you have. So the second major topic here was the benefits of participation. Let's go to the third major topic, the role of culture. The role of culture. Culture certainly plays a big role in participation and building teams and leading teams. And you can be in one culture and find that certain aspects of the culture might help to build a team, but other aspects might hurt. And as you change from culture to culture, go see those aspects change. But your textbook, in talking about the roles of culture, mentions at least 3 examples of where culture is certainly going to have an impact on teams. Now, they're talking primarily, I guess, with regard to the culture, say, of this country or that country or whatever, but this could also be the culture of your business. I mean, every business, in a sense, has its own culture. You could work at a McDonald's, and you can find that the culture at the McDonald's you worked at, say, in the downtown area, is different than the culture of the McDonald's that you worked at when you went away to college. And what you're going to find is that the culture changes from business to business, culture changes from country to country, and you have to take a look at that, particularly when you're talking about leading teams. Now, they mention, as I say, 3. Let's give an example. Collectivist cultures emphasize team processes. Collectivist cultures emphasize team processes. So, for example, if you are living in or working in a culture that really emphasizes collectivism, everybody working together, the odds are you're going to find that it's going to be, that culture is really going to encourage and help you to build teams, to lead teams, to get participation, etc. with regard to it. Let's take another example. They say that cultures with high power distances, here's the boss, and the boss is looking down, here's the people on the underlings, and looking up, and there's very little interaction. These people say jump, and they say how far, but they never really interact with the boss. Cultures with high power distances tend to reduce team empowerment, tend to reduce it. These people have the power. They really don't want to give these people the power, etc. They want to keep the power distance separate. So that type of culture is certainly going to impact your team development, your team leadership, etc. The last example I'll give to you that's out of the book, there's some others and you probably should look at it, but the last example is cultures with a high human orientation. They support the use of teams. Cultures with high orientation usually support the use of teams. High orientation, we're looking at people and the relationships between people. We're trying usually to bring the people together. Well, how do you bring the people together? You bring them together on teams. You bring them together in units and groups. You bring them together on teams. So again, this third major topic, the role of culture, one of the things you want to do is, wherever you're located, take a look at the culture, because it's probably going to impact your desire and your ability to form and to lead teams. Let's go to the 4th major topic under this leadership, team leadership chapter that we're in. The benefits of delegation, the benefits. Textbook lists 4. I am sure we could come up with far more than 4, but the 4 are pretty good. You should think of your own. Can you come up with more? And again, if we're in class, before I get into that, I go around and ask you, what about you? What do you think the benefit is? What's the benefit, etc. Let's take a look at the benefits. And they mention, as I say, they mention 5. The first benefit, it frees a leader's time for new tasks and strategic initiatives. It frees a leader's time for new tasks and strategic initiatives. If you're the type of leader who you do everything, you don't have time to do a whole lot of new things. You're probably at 24/7 already maxed out. Whereas if you can find others, okay, I'm going to give this duty, I'm going to give that task, I'm going to give this authority to these various teams, all of a sudden now you have a little bit more time. And think about it, as a team leader, should you be spending all of your time doing the day-to-day things and all the activities, or should you spend also some time looking at the broader picture and trying to come up with visions of where to go and how to go there, etc. So again, it frees the leader's time for new tasks and strategic initiatives. The second benefit that they mention, the delegation, team building, it helps employees to learn and develop. Helps them to learn and develop. I want you to think about this. Think how many times someone has tried to teach you to do something. Oh, here's how you tie your shoe. Here's how you ride a bike. Here's how you do whatever it might do. Think how often just them telling you what to do didn't help that much. Where you really learned how to do it was once you got that hands-on learning and you started to tie your shoe or ride your bike or whatever. So by getting employees involved, by delegating various activities to them, delegating power, empowering them, etc., this allows them to become involved. And by becoming involved and active, now they're learning by hands-on learning. Well, related to that, let's take a look at the third benefit of delegation. It allows employees to be involved, so engagement goes up. And we've already talked about the huge importance of engagement. If you have employees and team members who aren't engaged, the odds are they're going to start to get bored. They're going to feel like outsiders. They're going to drift off. They're not going to have that loyalty and the motivation, etc. So by getting them involved, by delegating tasks to them, by getting them to participate, now that they're involved, their engagement goes up, and now all of a sudden things probably are going to be better for you with regard to the group loyalty and the motivation and the commitment, etc. they're going to have. Let's go to the fourth benefit of delegation. It allows for the observation and evaluation of employees. It allows for the observation and evaluation of employees or your other team members, or whatever you might have. If you're able to delegate some of these tasks to others and empower them with other things to do, this gives you a little bit of free time, and part of that free time, you should probably be observing your employees, observing the team members, evaluating them, etc. And seeing what works, what doesn't, who needs some additional training, who should be in a different position or whatever. And that time to observe and evaluate can be very critical for you. And finally, the fifth benefit that you have of delegation, it increases employee motivation and satisfaction. It increases their motivation and satisfaction. Now, we've already talked about how becoming engaged oftentimes motivates you. Part of that is now that you're part of the process, now that you're engaged and participating, you can take ownership in the idea or the activity, at least some, more than if you were just sitting on the bench doing nothing. So all of a sudden now you can see the motivation is going to go up. But how about the satisfaction? Well, a couple of things come into play here, but one of them I'm going to mention right off the bat. Think about one of the things in classes that absolutely drives you nuts, being bored. And unfortunately, in a class like us, I can't get much interaction, and therefore I can't get you engaged. And I think and I fear that you folks might be bored in a class like this. Well, certainly in an interactive class, if you have an interactive class and the professor's doing nothing but lecturing, and you get bored, what are you doing? You're looking at your phone, you're thinking of other thoughts, you're taking a nap or whatever that you have. Well, you don't want people to get bored. Not in your workplace, not in your classroom, not on your team or whatever. Well, by delegating tasks to them, by having them participate, now all of a sudden they're probably not going to get bored because they have something to do. And if they're not bored, they're probably going to be more satisfied. So you see here under the benefits of delegation, the textbook mentions these 5, and I think these 5 are good. I also think that you can probably come up with some more, some others that might even be better. Let's go to the 5th major topic under leading teams. Guidelines for good delegation. Guidelines for good delegation. You want to delegate, you want to have teams, okay, and we don't want people bored, so you're delegating some duties, you're delegating authority, empowering people, etc. What are some guidelines for it? Your textbook has 7 guidelines. The first, you want to delegate both pleasant and unpleasant tasks. Pleasant and unpleasant tasks. It's hard to delegate unpleasant tasks, particularly if you like your employees, etc. And you're more of a human-oriented type of individual than a task-oriented. Again, going back to, say, the Ohio State Michigan studies, where do we stand and things like that. Another thing, too, is remember the insiders and outsiders. Oftentimes you find that you delegate pleasant tasks, good tasks to the insiders and the unpleasant tasks to the outsiders. Probably going to want to work on that. So, and also think about too, we're talking about needs to achieve, etc. Remember, one of them is need. Basically, you want to be loved. You want people to like you. Well, if you want people to like you and love you, whatever, you're not going to be inclined to give them bad things to do. You'll probably do it yourself. That's probably not very good. It's probably not a very good leadership tactic. So again, the first thing I mentioned is you want to delegate both pleasant and unpleasant tasks. Let's take a look at the second point that they have under guidelines for good delegation. Clarify the goals and the expectations you have. Let everybody know this is what our goal is. This is my expectation, how we're going to get there, what it's going to be like, and other things like that. You want to be have that open type of communication. Remember when we went back and we were taking a look at the tips for managers or whatever, and amongst those things is we want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. And they know not only what the goal is, but the expectations, how we're going to get there, what it's going to be like when we do, and after we get there, what are we going to do once we get there. Let's go to the third guideline for good delegation. Provide support and authority. Provide support and authority. Think about it. If you don't provide enough support, or you don't give them enough the authority they need to get the task done, Haven't you, in a sense, created a barrier to them getting it done? Remember that 85-15 rule? 85% of the time that companies or teams fail to make the change, fail to accomplish the goal. It's not their fault, it's yours as a leader. Well, because you didn't reduce the barriers there. Well, here, make sure you provide them with the support that they need, the authority they need to get things done. Let's go to the fourth guideline for good delegation. You want to monitor your teams and provide feedback. You don't want to just hand it to them and say, there, go off, and then you go off and play golf or something like that. You want to be able to figure out what's going on and help to monitor them and provide support. Even the best of teams oftentimes will get off track. Even the best of them all of a sudden aren't going as fast as they could have. They're starting to slip and slide. Well, if you monitor this, you can help them, right? You can tell, hey, don't do this, try this, move over here, did you see this over here, etc. like that. So you want to monitor your teams and provide feedback. And by the way, if you don't monitor your teams, if you don't know where everybody's going, the whole system can basically collapse. Look how many times historically, with regard to, say, military campaigns, one of the problems that the general had was he or she couldn't figure out where all of the troops were, where all the parts were. One of the reasons that General Lee lost at Gettysburg, where the Confederates lost to the Union soldiers in the Army of the Potomac at Gettysburg, is Lee had no idea where his cavalry was. They took off, and they were supposed to be providing him with all sorts of information about enemy troop movements and stuff. They disappeared. He had no idea where they were, so he couldn't monitor them. He didn't know if they were doing good or bad. He didn't know what they were learning, etc. And he couldn't, of course, provide any feedback other than he got mad when they finally showed up. Well, let's go to the next guideline for good delegation. And this is, you want to delegate to different followers. You don't want to have favorites. You don't want to have servants. Delegate to different followers. Try to avoid that LMS model that we talked about with the insiders versus the outsiders. Try to delegate to different people. Also, if you only have teachers' pets, or maybe even servants, this person is the one who always does my dirty tasks or whatever, all of a sudden now they got other people not doing anything, and if they're not engaged, well, we know the problem that we have there. We just have two more guidelines for good delegation. The next one is you want to create a safe environment, remember when we went back to Maslow and we were taking a look at motivation? Well, one of the first ones was safety, right? Had your primary needs, but I think it was the second one was safety, safe work conditions, etc., and all these other things. So you want to have a safe environment. If employees don't feel that they're safe, if the team members don't feel they're safe, and you're delegating things to them, now you really start to wonder. First off, are you a good manager or a good coach, telling them to do something that's going to potentially injure them? But also you start to wonder about them. Are they going to start to hold back because, oh my gosh, do you see what's out here? So another thing, you want to make sure you create a safe environment. And the last of these, I guess it's number 7, the 7th guideline for good delegation that your textbook suggests, is you want to make sure to develop and improve your own coaching skills. You want to develop and improve your own coaching skills. You're the coach, you're the leader, and let's face it, we can all get better. Even the best coach, even the best leader can always get better. So you want to make sure that you develop and improve them. How do you do that? Well, one of the things you want to do is get feedback from those people who are reporting to you. Get feedback from them. Get an idea of what works and doesn't work. You don't have to listen to every bit of feedback. You can disagree here, there, or the other, but if you're getting a number of reports saying, hey, you know what, you should use your left more than your right, or your right more than your left, maybe you should start to think about that. So you want to develop and improve your own coaching skills, and one of the ways to do this is to get feedback from your followers. Well, that finishes up the 5th of the major topics here. Let's go to the 6th. The 6th major topic, excuses for not delegating. Excuses for not delegating. The textbook says that has 7 excuses for not delegating. And sometimes these excuses are good. There's a foundation for them. But sometimes they're just used as an excuse. People don't want to delegate for whatever reason, and they try to find excuses. Well, I didn't do it because of this, and I didn't do it because of that. So let's take a look at excuses for not delegating. Some are good, some aren't. Let's take a look at them. The first, your followers aren't ready. Certainly if your followers aren't ready, you probably don't want to delegate, but then that's also a reflection on you. Why aren't they ready? You want to make sure that your followers are ready. Let's go to the next of the excuses. Your followers don't have the right skills. Oh my gosh, I've got this task to do and none of these people know what to do. Well, again, whose fault's that? You probably should have recruited people with all these other skills or whatever, or if you didn't have it, train, etc. And even on the rare occasion you have something happen where all of a sudden I have a skill that's needed, I don't have it here, but we usually don't need it. Okay, I can understand that. We'll go outside and find somebody to come in and at least temporarily fill that hole that you have. Let's go to the next excuse. The leader feels uncomfortable delegating. The leader just feels uncomfortable. Basically, we're talking someone who's a control freak. Remember we looked at that one chart with regard to control and challenge, etc. You know, if you're really high in control, you probably do have trouble delegating. You're afraid to delegate. You know, the people you're going to delegate, they're not going to do as good as you. It's going to come back to you, all this other stuff. If you're not good at delegating, if you have a high degree of desire for control, you're probably not going to want to delegate very much. You're not going to feel very comfortable. Let's go to the fourth excuse for not delegating. The leader thinks that he or she can do better and faster alone. The leader thinks that he or she can do better and faster alone. Now, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes, indeed, you know, I've been in a position where, oh my gosh, I got to get this thing done, and I could give it to somebody who hasn't done it before. I can teach them. So by the time I go through and teach them, figure out what to do, and this is going to take far longer, etc. I don't have time to do it. I'm just going to do it myself. Those things do occur. But one of the things you should also keep in mind, particularly if they occur a lot, maybe what you ought to do is recognize, okay, the first time I teach them how to do it, it's going to take forever, right? You know, I can do this thing in about 15 minutes. If I delegate to somebody, oh my gosh, it could be 2 hours before we get this thing done. But if you do teach them and spend the time for 2 hours to teach them now, well, the next couple of times that they have it, and thereafter, hopefully it's not going to take 2 hours, and eventually they're going to be able to do it, and that's a free 15 minutes for you. So you might want to balance the costs and benefits of this. The next excuse for not delegating is your followers are too busy. Hey, listen, you know, I'd like you folks to do, oh, no, I can't, sorry, we got this other task. Certainly that happens. Certainly there are times when your followers are too busy. But maybe you can parse away some followers. Hey, listen, yeah, you folks are busy on this, but let me just take one person away and we can do this or whatever. But that might be another excuse. My followers are too busy. The next excuse, just two more of these. The sixth one. The leaders are responsible for the followers' mistakes. Oh my gosh, if I assign this to you and you screw up, it's going to come back on me. You know, if you go out and you don't do this or you do that, and all of a sudden everything falls apart, no one's going to blame you. Well, I will, but nobody else is going to blame you. Everybody's going to blame me. So there's another reason why people are afraid to do it. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, if somebody else screws up, it's going to come back to me. Well, part of that then goes back to, are you someone who's afraid of failure? Do you have a high need to achieve? Where are you on that? Do you trust others? Are you not trusting? So you really want to take a look at some of those things, because sooner or later, let's face it, everybody has to delegate. Everybody has to get the team participating, and if you don't, you have all sorts of trouble. So you have to develop your trust in these people. You have to have confidence that they're going to do it well. Let's go to the final reason not to delegate. A leader may fear that his or her boss thinks that the leader is not doing enough, or maybe even doing nothing because, quote, it was the team that did it. Now, I've actually seen this occur. I've seen people who have worked really hard in building this great team, etc., and they got to the point that the team is excellent. The team is, I mean, it's just a well-functioning machine, and it's getting things done. And, you know, the boss comes along, and the boss says, wow, great job, team, and then looks at the boss and says, well, what the hell did you do? What the heck did you do? And the boss, well, the boss is the one, the supervisor was the one, the coach was the one that put it all together. That's the person who, you know, if you didn't have somebody to put it together, it never would have occurred in the first place. But it does occur. Sometimes your bosses think, well, you didn't do anything, the team did everything. But aren't you the one that put together the team? Aren't you the one that got it to that high level of performance? Nonetheless, it still might be a concern, so that might be an excuse. I'm not going to do it because someone's going to think they did it, and I'm not going to get it either. I'm not going to get credit for it, or even worse, I'm going to be told you didn't do anything. You like the team, see you later, go get another job. Well, that finishes up the sixth major topic. Let's go to the seventh major topic, characteristics of good teams. Characteristics of good teams. And the textbook has six characteristics of good teams. And again, if you're in class, this would be a great time for me to sit and stand and go around and ask you questions like, teams that you've been on, whether it's an academic team or whether it's a sports team or whether it's, some student group or whatever, teams that you've been on, what were some of the characteristics of really good ones? Were you ever on a good team? You have always liked, etc. Well, let me give you some of the characteristics that the textbook lists, and this doesn't mean that you still shouldn't go through and list your own. Let's take a look at some of the characteristics of good teams according to the textbook. First, the members are committed to common goals. We're committed, and we are committed to a common goal. It's not 3 of us are going this way, 3 of us are going that way, and 3 of us are going that way. We're all committed to the same goal. So commitment is good. We have a common goal, that's good. Another characteristic of a good team. The members are mutually accountable to each other. Mutually accountable. Hey, we're all part of this, right? I want to do a good job because it's going to help you and the others. You want to do a good job because it's going to help me and the others. We're mutually accountable, and if somebody screws up, we're not blaming everybody else with regard to it. We know the buck stops here. I was the one who dropped the ball. Let's go to the next characteristic of a good team. The members trust each other. The members trust each other. They're loyal to the team. They're loyal to the team leader. They're loyal to the other members. The members trust each other. We've gotten together so well. I know you're going to do this. One of the best sports teams that I ever managed was called the Bears. It was a kind of an independent team. It was part in our league, but in our athletic association, but more so is pretty much independent. And one of the best things, we were together for about 3 or 4 years or whatever. And over that time period, the players really got to know one another. They really developed a huge trust in one another. They knew that, if a ball got hit out there and I missed it, somebody else is going to get it. If I came up to bat and I just got a little dinger someplace or whatever, I know that the other runners on base, they're going to run as fast as they can and they're going to get to base even if I get thrown out, etc. There's a huge amount of trust, and that particular team went undefeated. Undefeated. Why? Because everybody trusted each other so much, and that was something really good, a good characteristic of a team. Let's go to the next good characteristic or characteristic of a good team. The culture is collaborative. You work together. You help each other out with regard to things. You're all part of the system. We're all not individuals. We're part of the system. We're a collaboration. We're a team. The next characteristic of good teams, there's shared leadership. Yes, you have the leader, but then the leader delegates, and everybody's participating, etc. And, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take this group, and I'm going to take that group, and we're going to do this, that, and the other. There's shared leadership. And then the final characteristic mentioned by the book, and as I say, I hope that you will come up with far more than this, but the final characteristic is there's a good fit on the team, and this creates synergy, buzzword there. Good fit. Again, we come back to it's not the individual parts, it's not the individual players, it's the system, it's the team. So if you have a good system, if you have everything fitting together, right, now all of a sudden you've got that great dynamic, etc. And now you can actually have what's called synergy. Now synergy, the easiest definition of that is you take 1 plus 1, and instead of that equaling 2, you take 1 plus 1 and that equals 3 or 4 or something like that. Well, where did the extra value come from? We only had 2 parts and they're each worth 1, and all of a sudden now the part of the value of the whole thing is 3. How 1 plus 1 is not equal to 3? Where'd the other 1 come from? Well, that's because sometimes the parts fit so well together, they're reinforcing. They help one another out. They increase the value of other players, other members of the team, just because of the way we're together. I want you to think about how many times have you seen, let's go to pro sports. How many times have you seen, a really good player on some team, whatever it might be? Let's say it's a player that's, on say the New York Giants, and the player just does amazingly well. And then a free agent comes up and says, see you later, goes after the big bucks and goes out to another team, maybe a team that's even better, say, than the New York Giants, goes out and is now with the San Francisco 49ers. There we go, great, etc. Doesn't do very well. Well, what happened? Well, that player's value was higher in the system on the Giants than the player's value on the system of the 49ers. You fit better up here than you fit here. So the point here is fit can increase your value, because all of a sudden I might be worth $4 on this team, but when I go to this team I might be worth $2 or maybe $6. My skills haven't really changed. What's changed? the way that I fit the rest of the organization, the rest of the system. If I find a really good fit, all of a sudden my value might go up. Where it's at, that's synergy. 1 plus 1 is equal something greater than 2. That finishes up the 7th major topic for today, and that's characteristics of good teams. Let's go to the 8th major topic, dysfunctions in teams. Dysfunctions, basically what hurts teams. What are some characteristics of bad teams, teams that just aren't doing it? The textbook lists 5, I guess. The 5th one I've kind of added. It's somewhat in the book. I've kind of added. But again, I think you could come up with more. Again, if I went around and said, yeah, have you been on a bad team? What went wrong? And we talked about it. You'd probably come up with a couple more reasons, some of these reasons as well, but probably come up with some other reason. Let's take a look at some dysfunctions in teams. The first is called groupthink. Groupthink, certainly a buzz phrase here. And that's where you're all together, and now all of a sudden everybody starts to think like one. And even those people who start to think other things, they think, oh, I can't say anything because I want to be part of the team. And we develop groupthink, and we develop kind of a silo vision. And all of a sudden we don't see things that are out there. Why? Because we're just thinking in one way. We've kind of closed our mind. Groupthink can actually hurt an awful lot of organizations. It's good to have, the various players coming in with different ideas, etc. Isn't that one of the reasons we wanted this diversity on our team? We wanted the different ideas. If all of a sudden we're all thinking the same, we've lost that diversity, and we're not thinking as broadly in various thought processes that we have. Let's take a look at the next dysfunction. And this one, I bet you've run into in your various academic teams that you've had. Free riders and ghosts. Free riders and ghosts. If any of you have ever been on a team, or a team of 3, 4, 5 people, and one of the parties, and maybe more, that's even worse, but at least one of the parties doesn't do what he or she said he or she was going to do. Oh yeah, I'll write the part on the marketing, and then doesn't. Oh yeah, I'll go out and I'll do the research on finance, and then doesn't. And then literally disappears, and maybe at the last minute comes in and tries to do a real horrible job. Well, these free riders and these ghosts, they bring down the whole team. Because think about it, if you did have a ghost who didn't do what he or she said, the other parties have to, all the other team players, all the other team members, all of a sudden they have to go and make up the work if they can to try to fill in the gaps. And usually they're already busy, and who's going to get the time to do their work? So oftentimes the whole team is dragged down because of free riders and ghosts. Another dysfunction in teams is negativity, bad attitudes, and a blame mentality. Negativity, bad attitudes, and a blame mentality. Have you ever been on a team where somebody just was constantly negative? They're always in a bad mood. They have a horrible attitude. Well, if you think about it, in fact, take a look at your book. There's something about Angie's List mentioned there, one of their cases and examples. And she said that bad attitudes spread like a virus. And of course, that's a bad thing to say now, of course, with the coronavirus going all over the place. But if you think about it, that's true. They say one bad apple can taint all the rest. All the bacteria in it, and then spreads to the other apples and makes them bad. And the same thing happens in a business and an organization. If you have somebody that's negativity and bad attitudes and blame mentality, that can bring everybody down. One of the teams that I managed years ago had a really good kid, little kid, etc., really good kid. Talent-wise was high, maybe around 85 to 90% in the percentile. Really pretty high. Probably could go even further if you wanted to. But this kid had a bad attitude. Everything was bad. It was not half full. It was always half empty. And if you get into a situation, and you always did in games where sometimes you're behind or whatever, next thing you know, we're behind by 2 or 3 runs. He's got everybody thinking that we're losing by 10. There's no way to win this. If you don't stop it as a leader, all of a sudden this attitude, oh my gosh, we're never going to win this game, all of a sudden it just spreads to the other players, and that's really difficult. You don't want to let that happen. As, again, Angie's List said, it can spread like a virus. Let's go to the only 2 more dysfunctions of teams. The next is lack of cooperation and trust. Lack of cooperation and trust. One of the things you want to do with the parts that you have on a team is you want them to coordinate, right? We're all coming together, we're working together or whatever, and if they don't coordinate, all of a sudden now you're not getting things done as well as you should have, because we've got the team, we should be helping each other out, and we're not. we're not coordinated. All of a sudden, and again, I'll use a baseball analogy. All of a sudden, the shortstop is running into the second baseman's area to catch a fly ball that the right fielder should have had, and then we get a clash or a collision of the second baseman, the right fielder, maybe even the first baseman's involved, the pitcher, nobody knows what's going on. So one of the things you have to do is you have to have cooperation. Everybody has to know where they're going, and you also have to have trust. I remember one of the jobs I had early in my career. I went in to an organization that had just got a new leader, and the new leader was not liked by most of the new people. By most of the people in the organization who'd been there for a while, and the organization basically divided into two: the people who liked the new leader and the people that hated the new leader. So what we had is a huge lack of trust between these two segments, etc. And all of a sudden, the lack of trust, that also hurt the team. So you want to be careful. You don't want to have a lack of cooperation, a lack of trust. You want people to cooperate and trust each other. And the final dysfunction in teams, one that the textbook kind of mentions, but I've added as a fifth, just more clearly, poor chemistry. Just poor chemistry. There's no fit, fit leads to success. So if you don't have fit, the odds are not as good that you're going to be successful, that you're going to win, that you're going to be profitable, whatever it's going to be. And think about with regard to chemistry. Sometimes it's not the fault of anybody. You just have people on the team that just don't get along. Think about people in your life that you've had that you don't necessarily hate or despise. For whatever reason, you just don't get along with them. They talk when you talk. There's no whatever. Everybody's off time. The topics are different. Well, it's nobody's real fault. It's just you just don't have that right chemistry. So that's another dysfunction you can have in teams. As I say, oftentimes that's not the problem, not the cause of the individual players. However, we can go back and ask the team leader, when you recruit people, don't you think you should recruit so that people fit, so all of a sudden we have that proper chemistry? Now, that doesn't mean we recruit everybody who's just like us, because what we want here is, the best salad in the world doesn't have just lettuce in it, right? We want to have, all sorts of differences in it, and it's going to make this salad the best. We're going to have tomatoes, and we're going to have onions, and we're going to have, whatever else you want in it with regard to that, and then, some sort of, dressing and things like that. So one of the things that we want to look at is the chemistry. Do we have the right chemistry? Well, let's go to the ninth and the final topic for team leadership, and that's the role of team leaders. The role of team leaders. If you're going to lead a team, what should you do? What are the roles that you have? And the textbook has 9 things that, roles of team leaders, things that you want to do. Let's take a look at them. The first, you want to coordinate the activities. Another way of saying is you want to coordinate the parts. You want all the parts to fit into a really good system. You want to pull it all together and have that, that Swiss watch that they used to talk about. Everything's working fine. All the parts are in the right place at the right time. The next role of a team leader, you want to define team boundaries. This is our team. Everything outside is not our team. This is our team. This is who our team is. And with regard to inside our team, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, etc. Define team boundaries. The next, you want to help define goals, right? Yeah. Okay, what's the goal of our organization? If people don't know where you're going, no one will go anywhere, right? They're going all different places or whatever. You want to define the goals that you have. And again, think about some of the things we talked about with regard to goal setting and other things like that and motivation. Let's go to the next of these. Another role of team leader is you want to make individual contributions. What this is saying is, okay, you're a team leader, but you should participate too. You should, make your individual contributions. Honestly, I've seen and been involved in organizations where the team leader, no one really ever saw the team leader. The team leader was up here and closed the office door and was down the hall and couldn't even get to it, etc. And, with regard to what have you done? Did you do anything? Did the team? So one of the things you want to do as a team leader, make some individual contributions. Yes, you're the team leader. There's other things you're going to do, but on occasion, it's not bad to go down and help out. Let's go on to the next of the suggestions for a team leader. You want to counsel and encourage. You want to be, the chief encouragement officer there to encourage people. Remember the positive type of manager or whatever. You want to encourage people and you want to counsel. Hey, listen, I think, you got a problem. Let me tell you, okay, here's what I think with regard. Try to help, try to counsel with regard to it. The next role of a team leader, and we just have 4 more, is to obtain and provide training. One of the reasons so many of the baseball teams that I managed did so well had nothing really to do with me. I mean, I never pitched, I never batted, I never caught a ball, I never stole a base or whatever. But what I did do is I scheduled, and I didn't, I really didn't have much of control over the schedule, and most of the time I was in the league and I said, here you go. But I did have control over training, and I did have control over the days when we're going to get together for the practices or whatever. So with regard to this, you want to do lots of training, you want to be able to instruct, etc., and try to make them better. And again, go back to what was it that Taylor said, with soldiering, the fastest speed your team's going to go is the speed of the slowest player. Well, train that person to run faster, do something. Now everything's going to, the whole team's going to go faster. Let's go to the next of these. The next role of a team leader is to observe from a distance. Yeah, you want to participate, you want to get down there, etc., but observe from a distance. Again, I know a lot of team leaders up here, they never paid any attention. Once they got everything running, they're off, they're playing golf, they lock their door, whatever. You want to observe from a distance. Yeah, and as part of this, too, goes to this. Have you ever had a boss, or maybe a parent or a teacher, who's constantly looking over your shoulder, this is what you got to do? Give some distance. Let the people figure it out. You can tell them, you can help them, you can do all sorts of training, there are things like that, and give clarification or whatever, but give some distance. You don't have to be over somebody's shoulder all the time. So observe from a distance. The next suggestion they have is you want to manage conflict. The best of teams will have conflict. Even that great team that we had, occasionally you might have a player who's mad about this or gripes about that or what. Manage the conflict, and if you manage it well, the chemistry is still there, the dynamic is still there. And then the final suggestion that they mentioned here is you want to assess and evaluate the team. Assess and evaluate it. And that's a true assessment of all the individual parts and the way that you put it together, the system, what can I do to make things better, how can I improve the system, how can I improve the players, etc. that I have. Assess and evaluate the team. That's a key role of any leader that you have. Well, at this point now, we've concluded the section on team leadership. Now, what we're going to do next is you're going to have quiz 2. And then we're going to come back and we're going to take a look at one more topic. We're going to take a look at the topic of implementation. Then we're going to take a look at a video, etc. And then you're going to have your team term project that's due. So let me talk a few minutes about quiz number 2. I don't have it made up, but I can tell you historically what it's been like. It's going to be very similar to the way quiz 1 was structured. It's not going to be comprehensive. It's not going to cover or to focus on anyway the materials that were in quiz 1. There were some things in quiz 1 that we talked about as we went through. You saw me oftentimes making some reference, but it's usually a general reference, like I just made a reference to soldiering, etc. I didn't go into the great detail of everything Taylor was doing. So some of those things might pop up, but the main focus of quiz 2 will be the chapters that were assigned after quiz 1. Quiz 2, once again, will be divided into 2 sections. You're going to have the multiple choice and true and false section, which usually those questions come mainly from the book. You're going to have a section that's going to have short answer, fill in, maybe short essay. Those questions are going to come mainly from lecture, any videos I've told you to take a look at, any cases that were in the book or examples that I talked about, etc. with regard to that. There might be extra credit. I always give it on quiz 1. Sometimes on quiz 2, it depends, and we'll take a look at how the grades are looking and how your class is participating. So there might be some extra credit. And indeed, if there is, it's going to be short answer, fill in, etc. And one of the things that you're going to want to do is, if indeed there is, you want to make sure that you leave yourself some time at the end of class or after you're done taking the exam to answer those extra credit, because they can indeed be the difference between a B plus and an A minus grade, etc. So you want to make sure that you give yourself some time if indeed there are any. Again, this is going to be, because you're taking it home, it's going to be open book, open notes, everything that's on Canvas. I would ask you not to engage with one of your classmates or somebody else to assist you. Just please do this on your own. And when you're ready for it, what you'll do is you'll send me an email and say, I'm ready for it. I'll send it back to you, and you'll have approximately an hour to take it. and then after you take it, you're going to email back to me the cover sheet, the answer sheet, or whatever that you have. When you get it, you can do it in two ways. You can just take it on the screen, because when I email it to you, it's either going to be in a PDF form or it's going to be in a doc form, and you can answer it right on the screen, or if you want, you can print it out, you can answer it there and then take a picture of that and then just send me the picture. So you can either answer it on the screen and send that back to me, or you can take a picture of it and just send that back to me that we have. Hopefully you'll find that the questions are based, as I usually do, to a great degree, on the buzzwords and phrases and on the cases and examples that you have. Between now and the time that you take it, if you have any questions with regard to it, please let me know. I'll be very happy to help you out with it. Again, I really love teaching, and the best part of it is helping students just like you. Well, now that we're done with the leading teams section, as I say, you're going to have quiz 2, and then we're going to come back, and I think we're going to be taking a look at the implementation section. And when you think about this, you have a great idea, you're a good leader. If you don't implement it, though, what's the idea worth? If you don't implement it, what are you worth? So we're going to be taking a look at that. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's class. Hope everyone has a great day coming up. I'll see you folks later.